Hello dear viewers, I'm George from Ireland and here I am outside St Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin. So let's just have a look at the Campanile and the belfry. Wow, the spire you can't really make out against oh you can now, the sky was a bit too white. So this is the oldest church in Dublin and possibly the oldest church in Ireland. So obviously it's dedicated to the saint of our isle, the one who brought the Christian faith to Ireland. So St Patrick was not Irish, a huge misconception. I remember when I went to an American school when I was tiny, in Saudi Arabia, and on St Patrick's Day, Mrs. Lord saying, which country was St Patrick from? And all the other children chorus, Ireland. And the only one says Wales. And I could see the doubt cross her face. That the only child in the class who said he was from Wales was the only Irish child in the class, and I said with utter conviction, because I was right, kind of right. Wales as such didn't exist, but the west coast of Great Britain, possibly Wales, could be what we now call England or Scotland. But anyway, he was abducted, brought to Ireland, forced to work as a shepherd for many years by 9 of the 9 hostages, mostly in Ulster, escaped to France, became a priest, became a bishop, came back, and then evangelized for Christianity. I shan't recall the whole story. This video is mostly about the cathedral here. So St Patrick travelled around, and Dublin wasn't the capital back then. Tara was the capital, if we had one, the hill of Tara. And he used to baptise people in the River Poddle, one of the lost rivers of Dublin. It's now built over. So then a wooden church was built close to that site to commemorate it. There was an island in the middle of the Poddle, 2 channels on either side. So it's roughly this spot that was it, was that island. So it was called St Patrick's in Insula, as in meaning island. So anyway, then in 1191, John Comyn, who was the Archbishop of Dublin, he was an Anglo-Norman. It's just after King Henry II of England came here. He said this church is now a collegiate church, and lots of priests and monks were devoted to serving it. It had an educational aspect too. Back then, education and religion had been almost the same thing. Not that every person of the faith could read or write, far from it, but if you were educated, it was about religion, mainly learning Latin. So it eventually became a cathedral in 1213. I don't know where the cathedral was before, because to have a bishop, let alone an archbishop, you have to have a cathedral. Every cathedral has a cathedra, that's the throne for the bishop. So and then an antechapel was added as dedicated to the Blessed Virgin Mary. So the spire collapsed in the early 14th century, and there was a lot of fighting then, so not much work was done on it. The chapel was falling into disrepair. So finally, the Great Tower, which is this end, was built under Thomas Minute, who was Archbishop at that time. So it became a parish church shortly after that, oddly. I don't know where the Dublin Cathedral was then. Maybe moved to Christchurch, which is just down the street. There's the Church of Ireland church. Obviously it was Catholic for centuries, till the 1530s, and the Reformation came here. Anyway, so 1555 it became a cathedral again, serving the Church of Ireland. The Catholic Church was banned, even though most of us remained adherents of it. The government didn't have much control far beyond Dublin, not in the 16th century. They did later. So the Guinness family are very famous. Arthur Guinness in 1759, at the age of 24, he invented that Guinness beer that was so famous. This porter, that black beer, incredibly portlyifying, a very fattening tipple. But so Benjamin Guinness was one of his descendants. Now they got the title the Earl of Ivy. It's pronounced Ivy or Ivea, I'm not sure. Spelled Iveagh. One of the wealthiest families in Ireland. But anyway, and they donated a lot of money to the church. And there's some housing over there that they built, the Ivy Estate. And you can see a lot of it in Dublin as well, in London as well, for a lot of their workers. So they're quite good employers. Gay Byrne's father famously worked for them as well. Gabriel Byrne, that is, not homosexual Byrne, who died last November, very celebrated broadcaster. The Guinness family being members of the Church of Ireland. So Jonathan Swift was born in Dublin to English parents, and he was a clergyman of the Church of Ireland, having been to Trinity College Dublin, the only university in Ireland at the time. Remembering when he was born in the 17th century, virtually nobody went to university, and a lot of people weren't literate even to the lowest level. So he was then made Dean of the Cathedral. I'm not quite sure what a dean's job is. Some fairly high up position, not bishop. or indeed Archbishop. There's obviously Archbishop of Dublin, there's a Church of Ireland one, there's a Catholic Archbishop of Dublin. The Catholics, we've got the Cathedral, which is just to the north of the river. So St Patrick's, this Church of Ireland one, and Christchurch, another Church of Ireland one, are both south of the River Liffey. The south side is generally seen as the more desirable side. It's difficult to generalise the city this large, because far enough north there's some plush areas, and then there's Tala in the south, which is one of the most crime-ridden districts in Ireland. Anyway, the park we're in here was built by the Earl of Ivy, and that's Edward Cecil Guinness, so one of the descendants of Arthur Guinness, the founder of the beer company. Anyway, so a very pleasant park. So let's take a bit more of a step out, and there's obviously no sign of the well where the patron saint of Ireland supposedly baptised people. He's laid to rest in Downpatrick Cathedral in County Down. Dunfermline na Porrig, I think it originally is, because Patrick in Irish you can say Porrig. And he's a Romanized Briton. Maybe he spoke Latin. His name is because he's a patrician, as in from the upper class. He had the power to calm maddened dogs. There was an attempt to assassinate him, but his coachman had swapped places with him, so it was actually his coachman who got killed, or his driver got killed, not St Patrick himself. Was he sent by the Pope? Apparently that's a medieval invention, because he was bringing Catholicism, Roman Catholicism. Well, it wasn't Roman or anything like that, it was just Christianity, because remember, prior to 1054, there'd be no schism in the church. The Eastern and Western Church were united. It was the Orthodox Church and what we now consider the Roman Catholic Church were one at the time, because he came here in the 5th century AD. Was it 432 his mission began? And Armagh is the religious capital of Ireland. That's in the north. There's the Archbishop of Armagh, the Catholic one, and the Archbishop of Armagh, the Church of Ireland one. So the Archbishop of Dublin is the primate of Ireland, and the Archbishop of Armagh is the primate of all Ireland. So now you see the scale of the place. It's lovely to go inside. I've been in there, I think just once actually, and it's very important in our history. What else? There are lots of flags, British flags of former regiments of the British Army that recruited principally from Ireland. Now, did there used to be some sort of cathedral school? Anyway, there's a choir school, but I think that's just for singing. It's not a full-time school. So that's it. I saw Senator David Norris there when I went to worship one Easter. So anyway, very fine looking. Is that Norman architecture? I don't know a great deal about architecture. What do you think? And I can't think of any other sites associated with St Patrick at the time. And then a bit south of here, closer to the River Liffey, there were lots of monasteries built in the Middle Ages, and they often had breweries. They were having beer, nice. Nothing sinful about that, but also fish. Remember, we had to eat fish on Friday. Well, we didn't have to eat fish. The important thing is you weren't allowed to eat meat on Friday. Not to the 60s, so Vatican II said, ooh, all of a sudden we just discovered it's no longer a mortal sin. But fish or eggs were thought as a good alternative source of protein. Okay, so that is just a little bit about St Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin. So many other St Patrick Cathedrals. I've been to one in Karachi. There's one in New York, obviously. That's enough from me. Okay, so thank you so much for your donations. Please keep them coming, because I desperately need them. And follow me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Make sure you subscribe. You can book online lessons with me in a whole host of subjects. And I'm a tour guide in London. I also edit documents, essays, dissertations, help people with things like that, interview practice and elocution. Toodaloo.